Okay, everyone, we are going to do a tier list of The Cure's albums, The Cure's many albums, The Cure's 14 albums. 14 albums. 14 albums. We're omitting Japanese Whispers because it's a compilation, but everything else is kind of included there. That's the only one that some people might be like, where is Japanese Whispers? It's a compilation of singles, so we're not counting that one. We're going to be ranking them into these tiers. It's going to be S+. Those are the ones that I think are the very best, and I think contend with the best albums made in general. S is some of their best work. A is a solid piece of work, but I don't think it's as good as the S or the S+ is. B is about a mid-tier for them. C is getting to the point where it's a bit flawed, and there's tracks on it that I like, and there's tracks of it that I don't like. And D is overall that I didn't really enjoy the experience of this particular album or albums there, because you don't know what's going to be there at the moment. If anything is going to be there, I don't know. Okay, so we're going to start with the debut album, which is Three Imaginary Boys. This is quite like an outlier on The Cure's discography. There's not really another album like this. It's very raw, it's very unpolished. It's kind of sitting in a sort of post-punk sort of style. Sometimes it sounds a little bit more like The Jam than it does The Cure, to be honest. But the band on this album, they had a bit of a lack of control over the production and the track listing of it. So the band aren't quite that happy with this album. I think it was actually a pretty decent album, but because of the lack of control and the lack of input on the band and the slightly rushed production, there are some kind of severe balancing issues. It's not the best experience if you're listening to it in headphones sometimes. The guitar solo on 10:15 Saturday Night will blow your ears off. You will get jump scared by Subway Song every single time. At least I do anyway. Maybe it's just me, but every time it goes, ah! I also make that noise. It also scares the life out of me. I feel like The Cure haven't really found their voice yet on this album, but I do think it's a pretty solid album. It's a pretty cool album, but they sound more like, as I said, The Jam or the Buzzcocks than The Cure at the moment. There's a few Cure writing staples here and there, like such as the melodic bass lines. Although, interestingly, Simon Gallup isn't in the band yet, but the melodic bass lines are still there. And use of heavy repetition to the point of being hypnotic, but set in a very different context than the rest of their discography. So this one, it feels very different. I think there's people in my stream as well where this is their favorite record and the rest they don't get on with as much. That can be the case because it's so very different to the rest of their material. I think it's a good record. I enjoy most of the songs on there. I do not enjoy the cover of Foxy Lady by Jimi Hendrix. I'm not a big fan of that, but it's quite humorous at the same time, so I'm okay with it. But I also feel like other artists have tackled this genre a little bit better, especially like Television's Marquee Moon, which is a Sublime record from like 76, and this is a 79 record. So I'm going to stick it in B. It's nothing like incredible, but it is quite enjoyable still, and it's quite fun to hear their roots as a band. The next record is 17 Seconds. And this is an album that challenged my perception of what an album should be, which is a very high compliment from me. If any sort of music can kind of challenge my perception of what music or like a song or an album should be, then I do automatically regard it higher than I would like just something that I just like purely enjoyed from the off. It's an album that is very much greater than the sum of its parts. It can come across, and it did come across initially for me, like the songs were a little half-baked. There's a lot of like little, just small instrumental passages in there, minus the standout tracks like Play for Today, Forest, which of course is exceptional, one of their best songs, and At Night, which I liked on the first listen as well. Collectively, the album has a very haunted and atmospheric feel, and it's one that seems to cling to you after its runtime. Its very short runtime of 35 minutes is through it. It seems to cling to you and beckon you to return to it. It's like, listen to me. It's quite a haunted kind of feel of it. It sounds a lot more like The Cure than their first record. They've got the chorus on the guitars. They've got a lot of things going on which make it sound like The Cure. On repeat listens, the stranger moments of the albums are the ones that become its most valuable assets to me, like the weird evolving snare on the song 3, the final sound which seems to like kind of wither out just as it begins. All these things contribute greatly to its kind of haunted atmosphere. And I really like this album a lot, and it's something that keeps growing on me to this day, but we're going to stick it in S there at the moment. So we're going to stick it in S. Okay, so next one is Faith. Now, Robert Smith kind of views everything, the 3 albums from 17 Seconds, like 17 Seconds, Faith, and Pornography as a trilogy, and I kind of get that feel as well. So this is the second in what Robert Smith views as a trilogy of albums. This album takes the atmosphere of 17 Seconds and expands it with quality songwriting and a more palatable mix, a more kind of traditional mix, an easier to digest sort of album, I feel this one is. This album was recorded shortly after Robert's grandparents sadly passed away, and it serves as inspiration for many of the songs, most obviously in the fantastic The Funeral Party. If you read the lyrics of that, it's very very solemn, very sad, very tragic. Lyrics throughout the album deal with loss, both of people and of also, as the title suggests, the Catholic faith that Robert was raised in. This is something that I kind of connect with. I was raised in a Christian household, and I kind of have similar struggles as Robert Smith does with that. So it's something I personally connect to. Robert's vocals are much more front and center, as I say, that more palatable traditional mix. And the songs are driven by like almost mechanically consistent drum beats. I don't know if they're drum machines. I don't think it is, actually. I feel like they're real drums on it, but it's just very, very like mechanical and like to the beat, to the metronome, to the click or whatever. And infectiously catchy bass lines, which is kind of a staple of the Cure sound. Despite this, though, the music is still incredibly mournful and gloomy. The chord progressions loop round like a dark mantra, whilst Smith recites his poetic laments over the top. Once a song has established its mood, it rarely deviates from it. It just kind of loops round and round and round, which leaves the album feeling like someone asking a question that goes unanswered or being stuck in some sort of destructive thought loop. I thought this was a very effective album at capturing the mood it's trying to get across. Also going to put this one in S as well. I kind of enjoyed this trilogy of albums a great deal, and more so every time I revisit them as well. It's so dark and difficult. Yeah, it is dark. It is difficult, but it's like sonically quite pleasant at the same time. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm talking. Let's move on to the next one anyway. Talking about dark and difficult, this and uncomfy. Here's the next one. All right. Okay, this album is Pornography. That's the title of the album. Hopefully, I'm allowed to say that on YouTube, but we'll just say it that once. Okay. So this is The Cure's goth masterpiece. Robert was on his last legs mentally, and instead of kind of giving in, he decided to put all of those negative feelings in to this record, which I think is actually quite a positive way of dealing with it. This is the point in the band's career where they adopted the image of The Cure. Before this, Robert Smith didn't really have the hair or the makeup or that sort of stuff, but they adopted the image of how we know him now with the hair and the makeup to kind of represent the violent nature of the music present in this record, and it is quite violent music. It kicks off with a song called 100 Years, and I really love this tune. It makes it immediately apparent what sort of experience you're getting into with this song. It just tells you where you're at. The first lines in the entire album are, "It doesn't matter if we all die," and it's delivered with maximum vigor and conviction by Robert Smith. And that just tells you exactly what sort of experience you're getting into. And it has a guitar sound that spirals around that can only be like described like a banshee that's been let out, released from hell. That's what it sounds like to me. It's just going around going, "Ah!" That's what it sounds like to me anyway. The intensity doesn't really let up throughout the album as well. So you might have a difficult time with this album because it is very intense. It drills into you all this kind of like nihilism and stuff like that. It's not exactly a pleasant listening experience, but it is a great work of art, I feel, anyway. There's menacing chords, insane studio manipulation, tribal drums throughout, and it all kind of creates this feeling like you've kind of just stepped into this cult-like kind of ceremony or something. Someone's been sacrificed or something like that. Honestly, Smith is actually quite frightening to me on this record sometimes, especially on the song the Figurehead, where he delivers a line like, "Freshly squashed fly, you mean nothing, in such a cold way that it really does kind of send shivers up my spine. And the title track does something I've really never heard in music before. It kind of starts off with these kind of sampled speech things. They're reversed, distorted, and it sounds like these kind of ghouls, like just kind of having like a conversation amongst each other or something like that. It's quite disturbing. And those samples kind of like last throughout the whole song, and the band are like desperately trying to be heard over the top of these strange manipulated voice samples, like they're trying to like struggle to overpower demons or something, which probably was what Robert Smith wanted to get across, because he was trying to overpower those demons in himself as well. So I kind of respect what they did there. I think it's very cool, and it's nothing that I've really heard in the music before that. It's really a horror movie of an album. If you don't like horror movies and stuff like that, you might not get on with this album. It's kind of toxic, claustrophobic, disturbing, and sometimes unpleasant, but I think it's a fantastic piece of art, and I find it very compelling. So I've stuck it up in S+. There's not really an album like this for me, and I think it's great. I think it's a fantastic piece of art, to be honest. So that was the trilogy of albums, kind of like the Gothic trilogy there, like where the Cure kind of got their goth reputation for. Now we're heading into something completely different, and we are heading there. Is the key word for me. So this is the top, and this is where I think that Robert Smith had enough of misery. He had enough of all this stuff. And he is trying a more bright album. It feels like quite a transitional album for me. There's a lot of fun and interesting ideas on it, but they don't always land for me personally. It kind of has the feeling of throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks, which can be a good thing. I do like albums like that, but I don't think many of the things stick for me personally. I think they do a lot of this sound better on subsequent albums, is how I feel about this album. Don't dislike this album, though. Incorporates many sounds of their contemporaries as well. There's some times where it sounds a bit like Duran Duran or something to me on this album as well, or Psychedelic Furs or something like that. Feels like they're looking outwards into what's going on around them. It's a charming record. It's one that doesn't compel me to return to it all that much. I just find the stuff that comes after more interesting and more engaging for me. And there's some standout tracks though. I really like Bird Mad Girl and Caterpillar. And the last track, which I can't remember its name, that has kind of a cool groove to it as well. That I like the riff, the kind of the very repetitious, creepy riff, bass riff. On it. I'm gonna give this one a B. I think it's a little. I think I prefer it a little bit more to the debut. Not a lot more though. I can kind of like give or take either of these two. As I say, I don't dislike this album. I just think for me, what comes after is a little bit more refined and a little bit more interesting as well. So this is Head on the Door. This one was immediately great to me. This, for me, is where the second era of The Cure really starts. I felt like The Top was a transitional album where they had some good ideas, but they didn't all kind of land. For this one, it feels like everything they were experimenting with The Top. This time they kind of approach it with an impressive level of finesse and mastery, for me anyway. This may end up being the Cure album that I listen to the most, because I think it's quite a comfortable listen. And there's a lot of great melodies involved, and and I appreciate a well-written vocal melody. It's beautifully written. It's clever pop music with just the right amount of irony splashed on top. There, where it's not obvious, but it gives it a little bit of levity. The arrangements are extremely clever and unique, with little twists of the unexpected to kind of keep you coming back to it and make you feel like, oh, I didn't notice that bit the first time. It contains two of The Cure's best singles, in my opinion, which is In Between Days and Close to Me, and both of which are, for many reasons, phenomenal. I also love Kyoto Song and Sinking. They become favourite Cure tracks for me as well. There's a couple of weaker moments, such as Screw, but it doesn't bring the album down much for me, but I found that song a little bit of a lull there. It's a very comfortable but engaging listen, and one that will be in heavy rotation for sure. This is quintessential pop Cure for me, and we're going to put that in S. I'll probably put it above Faith. I'll put that at the top of S for me. For me, a little. I didn't think it was too comfortable at all, actually. It had a lot of weird stuff going on, like 6 different ways, was very wonky and bizarre. It was quirky. This is the album I had the most difficulty rating, and I'm going to explain my opinions best I can. But this is Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. A lot of people seem to view this as maybe the second best Cure album, along with Disintegration. To me, it's an album that aimed to capture all of The Cure's sounds up until now on one record. And for the most part, I do think it succeeds in that. And I think it's actually quite consistently strong for a double album anyway. It's like it's an hour and 14-minute long double album. Lots of twists and turns in there, as should be expected by the description I just gave. I actually enjoy the whiplash on this album. I always feel double albums should aim to be one of two things. It should be a beautiful mess like Beatles' White Album, or it should be like a theatric masterpiece like The Wall by Pink Floyd. I think those are the two kind of like gold standards for double albums for me, and this one definitely falls into the beautiful mess White Album category there. And I think it works. I think it works well. I don't find it jarring. I just find it varied, basically. The band play very hard, and the instrumental arrangements are full of vibrancy and life, which does make it a very stimulating and exciting listen. However, the album is a little bit of a mixed bag for me, just a little bit. I enjoy it overall. It's the very minutiae things. Some of the synth sounds in particular, especially the synth horns, they sound a little tacky and dated to me, and they don't agree with me at my ears very well. I'm not particularly fond of funk rock Cure, and I think Hot 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 is probably my least favorite Cure single out of them all. I also think some of the tracks are a little bit too overstuffed with instrumentation, to the point the separate parts are kind of fighting each other in a way that I kind of find off-putting. And as such, Robert Smith is kind of struggling to find his place as a vocalist amongst the multi-layered stuff that's going on over the top of each other, and often resorts to kind of yells and shrieks, which is not my favourite Robert Smith voice. As I say, I prefer him when he's a little bit more held back, a little bit more melodic. Having said that, I do like this album a lot. I particularly appreciate the creative freedom and energy that kind of pours out the speakers for this one. It's honestly quite impressively consistent for a double album, and it's just fun vibes throughout. Of course, I have to mention Just Like Heaven, which is on this record, which goes without saying, a love song and a pop masterpiece, and one of the best love songs ever written, probably. Other standouts for me were Catch, I really love that tune, Torture, How Beautiful You Are, Snake Pit, And like Cockatoos, which might be a little bit of a weird one to point out, but I just kind of like the riff on that one. But yeah, I did enjoy this album, but it's going in A for me. I couldn't put it any higher just because of my own enjoyment there, although I do appreciate it from a technical and musical achievement standpoint. But my personal enjoyment of the album has to come into play here a bit. So we stuck it into A. Okay, we're going to move on now to Disintegration. This is possibly the most definitive Cure album and their true magnus opus. This album has everything that makes The Cure great, and it's an album where they put their best foot forward all the time, and they don't really put like a bad foot forward at all. So they stick to their strengths here, is basically what it is. Added to that, the track list is presented perfectly to the point that by the end of the album, you really feel that slow decay that the title of the album suggests. That's how I felt anyway. The music feels like staring into the dark, into the abyss, but instead of the dark staring back into your soul, it kind of gives you a warm hug. It's quite a comforting album in a weird, depressing way. It's bleak at points, and it's definitely depressing. But unlike their early trilogy, it's not unnerving or frightening. It's quite welcoming and it's quite comforting. It feels like a safe space where you can be at peace with your melancholy, is how I would kind of describe that, I think. The first half, up until Lullaby, contains the pop sensibilities that Head on the Door did, that I really like about The Cure. It has a more of a gloomy and serious atmosphere to it, though. All of these songs are wonderfully constructed, emotionally impactful, and very immediate, with a depth that makes return listens equally as enjoyable as the first. Then the second half plunges you headfirst into the darkness that their early material captured very well and is known for. Yet in many ways on this album, I think it kind of captures it better than that early trilogy, with some exceptions, because it's kind of like it has more clarity to it. As the album progresses, it feels like you're sinking deeper and deeper into this darkness until fully losing yourself to it, which is why I think Disintegration is a fantastic name for this album, because it's kind of what it feels like. If anyone asks me, why do you like The Cure? This is the album I would show them immediately. We're going to stick this right at the top, S+, there. Above Pornography. I'm sorry, Claire, but I do think this is just more the definitive Cure album. They kind of just do everything they're great at, all on this one album. This is going to be Wish. Now, this is some people in the chat's favorite album. At this point in their career, The Cure feel very self-assured and very confident in what they're doing and how they're putting themselves forward here. It's a very strong collection of songs that is unmistakably The Cure in sound. There's some real gems on this album. There's High, which I love. There's From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea, which is just epic. We played it today on stream. It's a fantastic song. There's the ubiquitous Friday I'm in Love, which people might be sick of, but it is a great song. There's A Letter to Release, which is just beautiful. And these are all amongst The Cure's staples in their songbook, I feel, and ones that people would kind of point to as their favorite Cure songs. There's only one thing bringing this album a little bit down for me, which is the sense of safeness. Which I didn't get on Head on the Door, but I actually do get on this one. And there's a sense of jadedness and kind of repeating themselves creatively there. I think I didn't get it on Head on the Door because that's the first time they really stepped into this territory. By now, they're kind of like, they've done this quite a lot. Smith even actually sings about it, because I was feeling this way about this album, and then I noticed that he's actually kind of singing about it on the last song called End, where he says, I think I've reached that point. Every wish has come true. Tired, disguised oblivion is everything I do. Please stop loving me. Please stop loving me. I am none of these things. Which sounds like he's kind of at the point of his career where he's had all the success that he ever dreamt of having, and thus is actually kind of struggling to find the creative motivation to kind of carry on. That's how I kind of view that anyway. But because he's kind of singing about that, that's kind of one of my favorite tracks on the album as well. I love that song. Might be my favorite song. I know, maybe not. It's one of them anyway. It's an enjoyable, solid listen, solid record with some real standouts. I'm going to put this one in A. It is a very good record. It's one I will listen to a lot. It's going to be A. I think I will put it below Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, because Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me is so outrageous. I can't help but kind of just give it a little bit more respect than Wish here. But this is a solid album with just pretty much great songs throughout. There's some times where it loses me a little bit, but the great moments are very, very, very amazing. Next up is Wild Mood Swings. This album starts off actually very strongly. Want is a fantastic track. Love that song. I play it quite a lot here on the stream as well. And really great song. I also enjoy the two that follow it. There's Club America, which is a silly side of Robert Smith that I actually do enjoy there. But this quickly dissipates into something a little bit bland for me, however. And it doesn't really recover until like the last two songs is how I feel about this album. I don't actually have a whole lot to say, which is kind of the problem with it. I enjoyed the addition of real strings, but I also feel like The Cure kind of lost some of their heart and soul in this record because the production is very crisp. The drums sound very ordinary, and they usually sound a little bit distorted and strange, especially like in their early albums on Disintegration and stuff like that as well. And although I like the addition of the real strings, kind of the synthetic sounds that The Cure had before, where they weren't quite real strings and stuff like that, kind of gave them a bit of their edge there and gave it a little bit of goofiness, which I kind of enjoyed about The Cure, although they can push it too far with the synth horns, as I've already said before. For an album called Wild Mood Swings, I find this quite remarkably tame, and honestly, it reminds me of the lesser Bowie albums like Hours and Reality, where there's like a few good songs on it and a few, like maybe a handful of good songs on it, and the rest just kind of passes by me. There we're going to stick this one in C. There's some really good moments. I really like the last two tracks, and I really like the Want and the two songs that follow that as well. But the in-between stuff, it does lose me. Every time, actually, I've listened to this like a few times just to check, just to see, and I actually feel about it the same way. I start off, I'm like, okay, B. I think this is B. And then after the fourth track, it drops down to C again, is how that feels with this particular album. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one, which is Bloodflowers. After a little fling with Levity on Wild Mood Swings, The Cure returned to the weighty pit of darkness with Bloodflowers, and this is where I feel they make their best work anyway. One of the many Cure albums where Robert Smith went in with the mentality that this would be the last and ultimate Cure album. Supposedly he's done this since Pornography, the album. He just keeps proclaiming that this is the last Cure album that I shall ever make. He's still doing it to this day. I shall retire at 70. I don't believe him. He keeps saying that it's going to be the last thing, but I don't believe him. I fully expect him to be still touring until the actual end. Because I just feel he's that sort of character, and his music is too much a part of his soul to kind of like discard it that way. However, this kind of mentality has created a lot of great work for him, so I'm not going to complain about the process. I just find it quite amusing. It's an album that sought to capture the artistic highs of Pornography and Disintegration, although it doesn't quite achieve that, I don't think, but it's still very solid and engaging listen, and greatly produced, maybe their most best produced album there. It sounds really, really good. It has, as I already said, it has beautiful production. It has emotive vocal performances. It's definitely one of the best works since Disintegration. The only thing that brings it down a little bit for me is actually the lack of variety here. It's in a very constant mid-tempo throughout, and it has a lack of memorable tunes. So it kind of escapes my mind after I listen to it every time. I struggle to recall the songs within it. But the overall sound and emotion still makes this a great listen. We're going to put this in A. Bottom of A. There, I think. There. It's a mood album, yes. Okay, we're going to move on to the next album, which is their self-titled album, called The Cure, obviously. Some critics described the previous album, Bloodflowers, as dated. And I feel maybe The Cure took this a little bit too much to heart, but that's just speculation. Because with this self-titled follow-up, they hired a very trendy new metal producer, Ross Robinson, known for producing people like Korn, Limp Bizkit, Deftones, amongst others. And the results for me are less than great. Although it's somewhat to be applauded for the band trying new stuff and new ground and going outside their comfort zone. I don't think this experiment really worked for them, to be honest. I find the production quite harsh on the ears. I find Smith's vocal performances a bit abrasive, but not in a way that feels super genuine. It just feels like he's trying to be more abrasive and more gruff with his vocals, and it doesn't feel like a genuine expression of emotion to me. Anyway, I'm not buying it, is how that feels. The album is briefly rescued by the track "The End of the World," which I think what they were experimenting with actually does succeed on this song, but I really think it only fully succeeds on this particular song. But they did get something good out of it, so that's good. I do celebrate the irony of them self-titling an album that sounds the least like The Cure the band has ever sounded, yet they decided to call it The Cure. This is The Cure, and it sounds nothing really like what The Cure has sounded like. It's kind of funny. But unfortunately, I didn't really like this album very much. It's going indie. Sorry to fans of this album, but yeah, I didn't get along with it. This is 413 Dream. To me, this album suffers from just being incredibly okay. It's nothing bad, but the tired feeling that I felt on Wish is kind of just keeps extending itself into this kind of era of The Cure. Here, so weirdly, my favorite thing about this album is kind of the muffled production, because I think it kind of gives it a nice kind of charm and character to it. It feels like someone's taken the high end and just kind of like scooped it all off. But I kind of like that about it. It gives it a distinctive feel from the other albums. It's still carried by The Cure being pretty darn good at what they do, even when they're just kind of working in automatic mode. But it's unsurprising that they felt the need to take a 16-year-long break after this little period here, because minus Bloodflowers, it just felt a little bit uninspired there, where Bloodflowers did feel quite inspired, and that's an A, but like it's been a little bit hit and miss here. That's how I feel about this particular one. I like the first song a lot, and then the rest kind of just blurs into one. The first song was called, though, Underneath the Stars, was it? I like that one. Songs of a Lost World. When this album came out, it was a mere 2 years ago now. I remember being extremely eager to listen to this album, as I thought if The Cure came back with a new record after 16 years, they must have something to express. And something to express they definitely had, indeed. But I didn't actually realize that what they were going to express would be so heartbreaking. It kind of took me by surprise. Many of the themes on this album are inspired by Robert's loss of his brother, and as such, grief is at the heart of many of the songs on this album. Most obviously in I Can Never Say Goodbye, which is very obvious there. And it's a song that he says he actually struggles to perform live because it's so emotional for him. But he does do it anyway, and that's commendable. It's a very emotionally challenging thing to do, and a very emotionally honest thing to do, to perform that song kind of live when you struggle with it. Music, this record is classic Cure, but this time they sound alive and at their best. That 16-year break has really allowed them to reflect on what makes the Cure. Which is things like Simon Gallup's bass lines, which are more prominent and more sludgy than ever. That was missing from a lot of the albums then, and I didn't realize how much it was missing until this album it came up and they were there, and I was like, oh damn, yeah, that's what it is. The drums sound like these reverby, like wonky things again, and I really like that about a lot of the Cure's best records. It kind of gives them a very distinctive, very heavy, weighty feel, and it sets them apart from other bands having that stuff. And they kind of lost that a little bit, I guess, in the pursuit for something a little bit more perfect sounding, which, of course, you want to do as an artist, of course. Also, this one has a shorter run time than many of their albums has. A lot of their albums since Kiss Me have been over an hour long, and the shorter run time on this allows each of the songs to have more impact there, and really make use of its allotted period of time, and it makes the whole thing a fuller experience there for me. There's also came a point, I think it was probably just after Wish, where Robert Smith seemed like he was writing lyrics about things people expected him to write about without really much feeling behind those lyrics there. Maybe exception of Bloodflowers. And although the subject matter hasn't really changed much, I can just feel the emotion from Robert Smith there, and that just makes the whole thing a much more enjoyable experience than some of their previous albums up until this point. The stars of this album are the opener and the closer. Alone and End Song are both magnificent, epic, beautiful pieces of music, especially End Song, which is maybe their best closer to an album. That song is an incredible piece of work. Really, really, really moving. This album definitely stands up with the Cure's greatest works. I'm gonna stick it in S at the moment. I don't want to fall into recency bias because I probably would put it maybe a little bit higher. I think there. I think it's hard to tell with something that's so new, because it doesn't have like the standout songs like Head on the Door does, where like In Between Days, Close to Me, and it's hard to tell how that is going to age as time goes on. I think it will age quite well, but I think I'm gonna stick that in S there. I might have put it in S+, but I feel like I'll be like falling subject to recency bias there because it's the latest one, and it's one that was very excited about being released, and the one that hit me because it's been such a long time since The Cure had released an album. But actually quite a difficult one for me to rank that one. I might have still put it a bit too high. I'm gonna stick it here for now. I'm gonna stick it there, but that's I'm very unsure about that. It's definitely S though. It's definitely S or more. Okay, so a whole lot of S+ albums there. I think people were like, the Wish something just moved just there already. A whole lot of S+ albums. I think Cure fans are very avid Cure fans. That's just the way that goes. Disintegration at the top as expected. I'm gonna move my camera. I don't know where. Maybe there. Let's move me there. There's none in D, so you don't have to see that, but you want to see the total votes. Okay, so 70 people voted S+, and definitely one person voted D accidentally. So very unanimous S+ there. This was very close between being an S+ and an S there, but pretty much at the top. The top is all over the place. It's 28 there, but it's also 15 B, so it could have easily been B as well. But the top enthusiasts won on that one. So Faith could be easily S+ or S, or even A there. It's quite close for that one. Very close again for 17 seconds. Could have been S+, could have been S. Kiss Me, pretty much unanimously S there with some S+. Songs of a Lost World, once again, pretty unanimously S. This one is, I guess this is whether you feel like this is quite a safe record or an interesting record. It's very much neck and neck for S or A, depending how that lands with you. Wish, once again, this was actually down here for a moment, which I was very surprised at. I didn't think it deserved to be down there. It's a good record. S or A, just very close there, extremely close. This one is actually surprising for me, but this is either S or A. Here, actually, it could have been B as well. It was close to being that. So there's some fondness for 413 Dream. Above Bloodflowers, though, which is interesting to me. But Bloodflowers was unanimously A. It's kind of just like everyone thought that was A. Wild Mood Swings could be anywhere here, really, but the Enthusiasts won. B for Three Imaginary Friends. Could have been C as well, though, actually. And then this one at the bottom, which is the one I put at the bottom as well. B. Could have been A, though. Could have been. But there we go. Just more for B.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to support me in what I do, then maybe you'd like to think about joining my Patreon. VIP members get access to all the covers you see here and more. Exclusive videos, all of my original songs, and demos of new tracks I am working on are available to Essential members and above. And finally, VIP members also receive a little gift from me in the mail for every 4 months they are subscribed. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.